Hi, everyone. We're so excited to have you here today to talk with us about procurement trends, especially as we've experienced so much change coming into and throughout the coronavirus pandemic. And we've seen a huge shift in technology trends, particularly in the supply chain and the procurement space, and we're excited to talk with you about that today. A few housekeeping items before we jump into the webinar. We will be recording this session, and all of you will receive a copy of that recording, so you can go back and you can review it again. You can share it with your teammates. We have all of you muted for sound quality, so you can make sure that you hear John primarily. And then, of course, we're going to be doing a Q&A session at the very end. So strongly recommend that you share your questions via the chat box. And if you have any questions throughout the session, we'll be monitoring the Q&A and the chat box as well. So feel free to pop any comments into that. I'm very excited and pleased to introduce John Jenkins as our speaker today. John is an accomplished business development professional for over 15 years, primarily in high technology software sales. He's been in engineering technology for most of his career. And John is a graduate of Brigham Young University with a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. John, we're really excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Joanna. Hi, everybody. As Joanna said, I'm John Jenkins. We're glad you joined us today to discuss the 6 procurement technology trends that are critical now, and we feel that they'll be even more critical as we navigate through the COVID-19 activities and afterwards. So welcome. We've got a lot of material to talk about today, so we want to make sure that we jump right in here. Just a little bit about Physna. We're the host of this webinar. Our technology codifies physical objects. We use geometric deep learning through our proprietary algorithms to turn 3D models into detailed codified data. So our technology helps organizations to find and eliminate duplicate parts in your PLM and CAD systems. So we also streamline purchasing and procurement by helping to allocate or to locate alternate suppliers for parts. So as I've been speaking with manufacturers since the start of this COVID-19 pandemic, I've seen 2 different scenarios. One, either production is shutting down or it's rapidly accelerating. There's very little in between, and that dynamic has a ripple effect across the entire supply chain for manufacturers. So as a manufacturing guy and an engineer, I know how hard it is to pivot a company. I've watched Ford and GM and others go from manufacturing automobile parts to making ventilators over the past few months. And it's been a huge pivot for their entire engineering and manufacturing organizations. As their success is heavily relied on their strong procurement organizations, they need to go from sourcing, in this case, automotive parts to medical devices. And it's been completely strategic sourcing has been at the heart of all of that. And relying on top-notch technology has helped them to pivot very quickly. Even if the business model remains relatively the same, different than Ford and GM switching to ventilators, supply chains have been entirely disrupted globally. Procurement groups have had to switch quickly to new suppliers or to find alternate parts to keep production lines moving. The success of a manufacturer's pivot relies heavily on the nimble procurement organization with top-notch people and a heavy reliance on systems and technologies. So we've seen throughout this pandemic a leap in the adoption of technology, from helping companies to pivot procurement and manufacturing to helping employees work remotely. What we've seen in 3 months has been absolutely transformative. The technology leap to digital that would have taken years has taken a mere months. So we're going to talk today about 6 technology trends that have impacted procurement since the start of the pandemic. And we believe these will continue to shape procurement organizations as we move toward the new normal of business post-pandemic. And one of the top ways that businesses can prepare for the post-COVID world is to reduce their dependency on physical labor across the organization in manufacturing, transportation, logistics, procurement, to name a few. This can be achieved through technologies like the Internet of Things, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. automated demand forecasting, and automated devices. So let's jump in here. Technology trend number one on our list is automation. As we've seen with GM and Ford shifting key production lines from trucks to ventilators, factories need to be able to modularize and shift their production lines to remain nimble and shift production quickly, even for products that are outside of their normal scope. So unlike in World War II, where the production shift took months and years to achieve, the production shift we've seen during COVID-19 have taken weeks, primarily due to investments in automation and technologies. These companies have been able to do this because they've invested heavily in production automation, which can be quickly reprogrammed to meet new production needs. They've also invested heavily in purchasing automation. I've spoken with many procurement professionals at companies that have invested heavily in procure-to-pay systems, but many companies are still struggling to feel comfortable in these areas. Procure-to-pay systems have the ability to issue requisitions, send purchase orders, receive purchase orders, and make payments. Sometimes these systems are confused with automated purchase order systems. So to clarify, purchase order systems only automate the manual process of creating purchase orders. A procure-to-pay system links to invoicing and payment systems, providing a full end-to-end process. So companies with procure-to-pay systems reduce the purchase order cycle from 7 days down to 2, and they increase the efficiencies in the way that enable procurement to be more focused on future planning and strategic initiatives, a real key area. In the past, companies have had point solutions for each part of the procure-to-pay process, and a number of systems are now available which offer end-to-end solutions. If you're interested in more information about procure-to-pay solutions, email us and we'll send you a link to the Gartner report with recommendations for enterprise procure-to-pay products. Technology trend number 2 on our list, connected data. The power of automation systems starts with their ability to connect data together throughout the entire procurement process. Prior to COVID, Gartner predicted that 50% of organizations would have near real-time procurement analytics. The pandemic has uncovered the need for real-time analytics. Physna, which is headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it's also the headquarters of Kroger, which is the largest supermarket chain in the US, and my contacts at Kroger talk about how their investment in connected data have allowed them to keep stores stocked and customers happy throughout this pandemic. Based on these kinds of stories, I have a strong conviction that more companies will invest in stronger data systems post-pandemic. Analytics are key to transforming your procurement organization and its processes. Information from data sets is helpful, but it requires a lot of manual work to understand trends, make assumptions, and business decisions. It's also not digestible throughout your organization. And it creates a huge lag in providing investments to inform decision-making. That makes it much harder for leaders to react quickly and to coordinate efforts. We run into this situation at Physna as we work at the crossroads of engineering, design, and procurement. These 3 organizations use different systems as each have their own data sets, but all 3 groups oftentimes work together within the same systems like PLM, which has its own challenges. So our Physna technology takes 3D models and codifies them into a universal code so that they can be shared and compared across your organization and with your suppliers. We enable procurement to see differences between models and compare them. Our technology identifies duplicate files in CAD and PLM systems, and it empowers procurement to eliminate duplicate parts within your inventory system. So Physna's technology also finds parts within parts. We run into this situation frequently where the same part with different part numbers is used within multiple assemblies. In a project we did for a large government agency, for example, we found that they had 50% part duplication within a subset of their database. So across the entire agency, that translated into hundreds of thousands of duplicate parts sitting in sitting in inventory. And that translates into hundreds of millions of dollars of capital tied up in unnecessary inventory. Due to the nature of collaborating across design and manufacturing, IT, and leadership, procurement has a unique ability to be able to influence and implement connected data across your organization. As we saw with Kroger in the past few months, connected data through systems, particularly procurement systems, is the key to enabling companies to thrive throughout the pandemic and beyond. Automation systems in procurement often have artificial intelligence built in. One great example, particularly during the pandemic, is using artificial intelligence to scan contracts for force majeure contracts. This can help businesses cancel contracts that are not beneficial during a period of huge disruption. And it allows procurement to be more nimble by choosing different suppliers and purchasing terms to keep the businesses in full production. As we've also experienced over the past few months, supply risk is a major challenge in the procurement process. Procurement teams have had to work through market risks, supply risks, delivery risks, and the power of AI also enables what-if scenarios. Powerful analytics tools provide what-if analyses to predict impacts of the situation or changing parameters such as costs, volume, and suppliers. Of course, many of these tools are used throughout an organization, not just procurement. But at Physna, we leverage the power of AI in our technology to help you understand more about your 3D models and your parts. Our technology quickly learns from your existing models through metadata and information that's added and tagged by your team. The power of Physna is to capture more data from fewer models and make more accurate predictions on that data. These predictions help your procurement team to understand the specifications of a model, including cost, materials, machinability, and suppliers, among others, that are best suited to manufacture your parts. So technology trend number 4, focus on user experience. Technologies that are focused on end users are leading the way to business adoption. Just take a look at Slack and Zoom and how they've been embraced even more during this pandemic, primarily because of the significant thought that was put into the user experience. As we think about the future of procurement, creating a simplified end-to-end experience for the procurement team and the influencers will become even more important. Again, Gartner estimates that 25% of purchase orders will be created by voice or chat in the next 4 years. We talked earlier about procure to pay, which is one way to approach a simplified user experience. More and more, ease of use is first and foremost in the minds of technology leaders in the procurement space and elsewhere. So simplifying the procurement process extends beyond the procurement organization. Providing user-friendly flows makes it easier for people throughout your organization to collaborate with the procurement team, provide meaningful input, and assist in real-time decision-making. So implementing simple, user-friendly technologies like digital assistants forces simplification. These assistants accept a limited number of options and choices, and they encourage stakeholders to head down a specific path to make a decision or to provide input. My prediction is that you'll start to see more and more of these virtual assistants and chatbots integrated into procure-to-pay systems to help with processes like contracts, account coding, billing, shipping. And as you think about the impact of simplifying the experience around procurement, think about simplifying some of the easiest interactions with your departments and look for ways to create simpler, more self-service processes. Think about repeat orders. How could you start to weave together a chatbot or a virtual assistant to automate the process to make it easier for people in your organization to self-serve? Automating takes time, but the investment of time up front can take workload off your team so that they can focus more on challenges and on becoming more strategic partners in your organization. Technology trend number 5, supplier visibility. It's a big one. One of the biggest challenges for business leaders is keeping data secure while at the same time needing to collaborate with suppliers in real time. As we move forward, linking data sets together and providing more real-time analytics, it's critical to give suppliers the ability to access your data so they can quickly see your demand changes and help your team react quickly. Providing your suppliers access to your analytics solves part of the problem, but IP protection is another challenge that can be even more difficult to solve. How can your procurement organization provide suppliers with the right parts, components, or assembly information to quote production and sourcing while protecting your intellectual property? With Physna technology, procurement can provide 3D models that can't be replicated, changed, or tampered with. We take any CAD or 3D model from your engineering or product team, codify it with our proprietary technology into a Physna file, what we call a Physna PNA, and this file can then be easily shared with suppliers to provide all of the detail they need to quote the production or sourcing of the item for your team. Since it's a locked file, it can't be replicated or changed in any way. Technology trend number 6, connected teams. The last trend we'll talk about is one that's impacting all of us. While many of our teams have had remote work capabilities, the last few months have demonstrated that our companies have to think more holistically about a remote workforce. Having a team that can work from anywhere and still collaborate effectively depends on the right security measures, strong communication tools, and network connectivity. So when developing these programs, companies need to ensure a secure data network, particularly when handling intellectual property protected files and sensitive data about pricing and customers. Some industries, like financial services, are embracing zero trust ecosystems that control access to the cloud and have high authentication measures. By having all the information in the cloud, along with strong security layers, employees will be able to access your systems and work from anywhere. Employee communications have become even more important in the last few months, with policies changing almost daily. If you don't already have an app messaging platform at your company, take a look at instant communication platforms like Slack that get messages out to employees quickly. But these platforms don't take the place of personalized communication and team collaboration. Zooms and digital conference rooms definitely help to foster communication, but encourage your employees to reach out to one another and have conversations to work through projects together. We've witnessed an advance in digital transformation over the last 2 months that's faster than we could have ever expected over 2 years. As we move into a new normal, we've seen the true impact of digital investment. I have no doubt that companies will invest even more heavily into procurement technologies that will ensure stability of your business in the future. And with that, Joanna, I'll turn it back to you for our Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, John. We would love to have you go ahead and submit your questions through the chat app, the Q&A, and we'll go ahead and start hitting a few of the questions that have come in so far. John, the first question I have for you is, our companies shut down extra spending and we're really controlling cash flow. And we've run into this conversation a few different times. How can we think about investment in procurement technology when we don't have the budget to spend on new platforms and new tools right now?
It's a huge challenge. Right now, most companies are in a situation where they're looking at their cash flow, they're looking at their current spending, they're looking at all aspects of investments and so forth. So to go to management and say, hey, we want to spend more money on these new systems, it's a big challenge. The critical issue here is to have a good ROI strategy with some data before you're going in. certainly there are ways to go about looking at that. We have done some of that with some of our customers, and would be happy to help you to be able to you know, figure out ways to be able to have ROI feedback to your management. The other thing is to think ahead. These things don't happen overnight, and as we move forward and as things open up a little bit, there will be a time very quickly where your company is going to realize that if they haven't made these investments, they will need to start looking at making these investments. So it makes sense to start right now, to start looking into these, to evaluating some of these tools, doing some assessments of some of these tools, some of them such as we've talked about. Again, we have some experience in looking at some of these and doing this with some of our customers. So those are two recommendations. Start looking at ROI now, and then start looking at, you'll have an opportunity in the very near future to look at that again.
That's a good one. Thank you. We've heard this one before too. Some companies have really changed their manufacturing strategy. We saw that with Ford and GM, but a lot of them are continuing with business as usual and production as usual. But of course, they're really struggling with disruptions to their supply chain. So how should they think about technology?
Well, certainly the main, I think the biggest word here is automation. You know, these disruptions and changes that need to be made, anything in your organization that can be automated so that people can be using their decision-making capabilities beyond what can be automated to solve the challenges and the you know, the exceptions to what can be automated. So automate as much as you can. Look for those things that can be fairly easily automated. We talked about some of those things today. There are obviously others, so do your research and checking on those. And the other is gaining access to your supply chain. Create a visibility into your supply chain and getting some of your suppliers to help you with some of this. Obviously, some of your suppliers are at the same situation you're at if you're still struggling with some of this. Some of them may be well ahead of you and may be able to give you some pointers and tips on being able to do this. So, you know, open visibility and interaction with your supply chain is also critical.
Right. It's a good one. We've also found, you know, some people have talked about digital assistance in procurement process. You talked about that earlier. So what are some specific ways that digital assistance might be able to be used throughout the procurement process?
Well, one of the easiest ways is to set up digital assistants, some of these chatbots and virtual assistants and so forth, to do things like checking on purchase orders, mundane kinds of processes. If you take a look at any process in your organization, start looking at what is the decision-making aspect of that process? What does it take to make that decision? Is it a relatively binary decision, a yes/no kind of a decision? Can you build some fairly simple smarts into a chatbot or some kind of a virtual assistant? Even decisions that have multiple sorts of answers, if you can build that into a relatively simple virtual assistant chatbot. You know, purchase order status. Has this purchase order been signed or not signed? Has it gone through the particular steps in the process? Where's it at in the process? Setting some of those things up. There are a number of tools out there that can help you with that. We can send you links that we've found, some of our customers and folks that we've worked with, and just some research that we've done on this. Since this is part of what we do, we can send you some links on some of those. I'd be happy to do that. Send us an email just asking us, you know, for any links or any assistance, and be happy to send that out to you.
John, thank you for that. We've had some other questions come in too that I'd like to get to here in a second. We also, as we mentioned, we'll be sharing this recording out with all of you. You'll get a chance to get this by email. Please share it with your teams. I think it's very timely information as everyone's thinking about what's next with the procurement trend. I've also had some questions, John, about how to get in contact with you. And so I wanted to put up your email address, jjenkins@physna.com, and you can also visit physna.com to learn more. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been great to have you a part of this. I know we had a couple other Q&A questions come in, and we'll be checking in with you and following up with you by email on those. John, thank you so much for being a part of this today, and we will be in touch.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.